إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله والسلام عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن اتبع سنته إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. We start by sending an abundance of peace and blessings and salutations on our beloved Prophet ﷺ after praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we start by reminding ourselves of the things that we spoke about in the last two khutbah. 2 weeks ago we spoke about knowing our reality. And in knowing our reality, knowing that we all have a mortality, knowing that we will meet our Maker on a day, and so we have to be real with ourselves in order so that we can understand and work on changing. And after last week we spoke about muhasaba, retrospectively taking ourselves into account. After things have passed, asking ourselves, where was my intention and where am I in standing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these things are very, very important. Both knowing our reality and taking ourselves into account. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said in a hadith, take 5 things before 5 things. Take advantage of 5 things before you lose those 5 things and they're replaced with another 5. The first of them is take advantage of your youth before you become old. The importance of taking advantage of our youth while we still have it. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he then said, take advantage of your health before you become sick. And he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, take advantage of your wealth before you become poor. And he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, take advantage of your free time before you become busy. And take advantage of your life before you die. Now all of these things have one thing in common. They all deal with our time. Our youth, we have an abundance of free time. And we're able to do things that once we become older, once our responsibilities increase, we no longer can do the things that we had the liberty to once do. And our health, once we become sick, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all, we no longer have the ability and the time to do things that once were very easy and we could do very quickly. And once we become wealthy or we have wealth, then that necessitates other responsibilities. That when you are less wealthy or less fortunate, you have the ability to just relax and do other things. While obviously being poor and poverty has certain requirements and certain responsibilities that come with it as well. But wealth in and of itself has a sense of responsibility that you no longer have the free time that you once had. And your life, this is the time that we have actually to benefit and work. نستعمر في الأرض. We can start to build in this life. Because once we die, once our soul reaches our jugular vein, then there is no more taking back. There is no more asking for a redo or trying to change things how they once were. And time is a valuable thing. Time is a valuable thing that many times we just sit back and watch as it goes by. We sit back and watch it as it goes by, as the pendulum swings, but this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swore by. He said, wal asr. He swore by time. Something that He subhanahu wa ta'ala only can do. And He didn't only swear by time in this surah. He swore by the metrics of time, by the sun and the moon, which while now today we have watches and clocks, this was how time was told until very recently. And then He swore by different times in the day. He swore by the night, wal layl. He swore by the morning time, wal fajr. He then swore by the dawn, then the morning time, wal duha. Then he swore by wal nahar, the daytime. And then he swore by wal asr, which is the afternoon time. Now, while wal asr is usually translated to time, asr, as we know, is a very specific time in the day. But as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in swearing by time, He tells us that most of mankind, that mankind as a general is in loss, that is in a state of red. We are losing, except for a small few. That if we do not benefit from our time, then we will be amongst them. And who are these few? These few that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about are those who believe. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. So that if we do not have a sincere and concrete belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a belief in Allah that motivates us into doing everything else in our lives, that fuels our limbs, as we spoke about last week, into doing righteous good deeds, then indeed we are in loss. And this belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not only does it require a muhasabah, a retrospective account of what we have done, but it also, to take full advantage of our time and our belief, it requires an introspective look. It requires us to look deep into what we're doing, not only after the things have passed, but while we're doing it and before we even take things into account. Not only do we have to have a muhasabah, but we also have to take ourselves into account before things happen. And this is a very difficult thing. This requires us to condition ourselves to paying attention to our deeds while we're doing them. It requires a different type of consciousness. It requires a different type of focus that most of us are heedless to. And this focus is something that we have to condition ourselves into doing one step at a time. We have to train ourselves to think before we act. But this muhasabah, as Imam al-Ghazali, this introspective look at ourselves, as Imam al-Ghazali, he mentions that in the utopian sense, when it's at its pinnacle, it permeates into every act of our life. That we become drunk with thinking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing else we're focusing on except Allah. And when we have this level of thought and this level of awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we're not going to look left or right. Our deeds and what we're doing is only driven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so much so that people, they forget what's actually going on around them. But Imam al-Ghazali, he said, don't act like or don't think that this level of consciousness or this level of focus on Allah is something far-fetched. Mind you, he's speaking to a people 1,000 years ago. He said this level of consciousness is not far-fetched. He said, think about a king or an iconic person that we dearly respect and revere. When we get in their presence, or some of us get in their presence, we forget everything else. It's known nowadays as Beaver fever. Justin Bieber, you know. When we get in their presence, we can't think about anything else. It's only that person. And everything in our peripheral becomes foggy. We have tunnel vision, paying close attention to every word they say, trying to fulfill and serve them to the best of our abilities, and trying to perhaps think about the things that they like so that we can now execute on those things without them asking. Imam al-Ghazali, he goes further. He said, what about the trivial worldly things that we have? Think about when we're on the internet. We got on to research one thing, but then we start clicking and clicking until we actually forget the initial thing that we started doing. If this is how we are with worldly things, things that perhaps just distract us and we forget about everything else. Our phones, when we're dealing with our families, we miss entire things that go by. Whether it's a football game or Facebook or other things, we forget about everything else that's happening right now. What about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do we have the same awe and same respect, the same yearning for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we do with our cell phones and these other worldly things? Because this is how this is the goal that we're trying to achieve. And perhaps we aren't there yet. But what about having ihsan, worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, perhaps not that He is aware of everything we're doing and being awe of Him, but knowing that He knows and is watching everything that we're doing. That is another level that we can strive for, brothers and sisters. Just trying to be aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times. Trying to live our lives in awe of Him, or in knowing that He is ever aware of what we're doing. And this muraqabah, this introspective mindfulness, is something that is not easy. Just like thinking before we act with regards to worldly things requires conditioning. And the unconditioned, perhaps it's the youth or other people, it's something that requires us to get used to. And before we're used to it, it's very difficult. With wisdom, with age, with conditioning, it can become very, very easy. But as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, speaking about this level of belief that goes into every part of our life, belief itself is not sufficient. He said, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Having belief alone isn't sufficient. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He used the wow. He used the wow al-atf. It goes directly with it. He didn't say thumma. He didn't say fa. These other different articles in the Arabic language that mean or insinuate that something comes afterwards. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. They believe and they do good deeds. So we have to ask ourselves, are we trying to suffice ourselves on our belief alone? Or are we trying to make sure that our belief is actually something that reflects in our actions? Is our belief something that fuels everything that we do? It snowed, it was a blizzard yesterday. How many of us fought to help out our neighbors to shovel out their car? And if you thought about it, alhamdulillah, how many of us actually did it? This is the belief that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about. Because He didn't say doing good deeds to Muslims, doing good deeds to your brothers and sisters, to your siblings, your family members, doing good deeds to perhaps your neighbors. He said doing good deeds. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. And this doing of good deeds isn't something that is talking about one specific person. Obviously, we start with ourselves, but this doing good deeds is a communal thing. Because this doing of good deeds is going to uplift our entire society. If each and every one of us takes this into practice. And this surah we recite on a day in and day out, I'm quite sure. It's a surah that we recite in our prayers and we just go by it haphazardly or very quickly. But this is how we should look when we're thinking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That our belief affects our actions, and our actions are that which fuels us to being good people in our day and day out lives. So we have to be people who don't just talk about it, but people that be about it. People who don't just give lip service, but people that are actually trying to uphold the Quran. As we say this is our book, but we put it into action. وأقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين واستغفروه. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعد أما بعد. So just to recap, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He swore by time. And this is Allah Rabbul Alameen, God Almighty, the Lord of the heavens and the earth, swearing by something. So that in and of itself shows its importance. But we said that He swore by time in many different ways, in many different styles. Something that we cannot take for granted, not 1 second of our time. We should try to capitalize on it in every ability that we can. But then He also said that we have to be introspective. We have to think about our internal. that in order for us to really capitalize on our time, we have to have belief, a strong, concrete belief that now affects our external. It now permeates, it comes out into how we deal in our day-to-day lives. And not only is it something that we have to do internally with our belief, and it affects externally, but it also affects us communally as a people. And all of this is not something that's easy. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. They call to the truth, or they advise with truth. وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. They advise with patience. Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala conclude this very short surah with patience? Because if we're going to advise others with patience, then we ourselves are being mindful that this requires patience. This requires diligence, and it requires a fortitude that is going to continue on. And if we're advising others with this, then we're all working together to have a sense of patience that is going to fuel us to grow and to be a better people. It doesn't happen overnight. While we have been conditioned to expecting things very quickly, we have to advise one another to have patience. And this patience is with the good things and the bad things. This patience is in the good times when everything is easy, and this patience is in the difficult times. But this is something that we have to have, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala advises with in this surah. In the good times, when we have an abundance of ease, when the weather is nice, when we have food to eat, or when it's a blizzard outside, but we have a warm, cozy house that we can drink tea, spend time with our loved ones, and we don't have to worry about other things. This requires patience, because perhaps we wanted to go outside, or we had things planned for that day. It requires patience so that perhaps dealing with our families is something that's a little bit difficult, but now when we're trapped inside, we have patience when dealing with them. Or we have patience in the fact that now I am forced to do things in a very constricted space, because perhaps I like to go outside and spend my time. Or perhaps in this time, it is not actually a time of ease. Perhaps we don't have the ability to turn the heat on in the house because financially things are difficult. Perhaps we don't have the proper insulation in our homes because no matter how much we crank up the heat, it's still going to be a draft. It's still going to be cold. This is patience in both the good times and the difficult times. And this is when we really show the fruits of our belief. When not only does it affect how we believe internally, who we are as human beings, but it affects not only our actions, but then how we deal with our situation while it's directly going on. And this level of muhasabah and then muraqabah, this level of retrospective auditing of our actions, and then an internal introspective mindfulness, this also affects our mental health. It affects how we think about life, just by this one surah alone. Because now we have a metric to live our lives. Now we have a metric to see how things go. We have people, we constantly think, well, I believe, why isn't this easy? Or I believe, why doesn't this happen? We know that it requires action as well as believers, and then patience with the actions. So brothers and sisters, this is how we have to frame our families and our lives. Having a sincere and certain belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A belief in Allah that fuels everything that we do. A belief in Allah that forces us to do good and then to have patience. A belief in Allah that now helps us in the good times and in the hard. We have to be a people that are on the forefront of doing good. We are a people that are trying to bring good to everything. But this good is based in our belief. Whatever good we're doing is not based upon what I think or what you think. It's based upon what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has deemed for us to be correct. We have the metric, it's already laid down for us. And then having patience isn't sufficient alone. Is our patience good enough? Or is our patience first founded in the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or am I relying on worldly things? Am I relying on the fact that I did such and such, or I want such and such, or because I have XYZ accolades, or I have accomplished certain things? First and foremost, our patience is in Allah. Our patience is firmly rooted in the fact that Allah controls all things. Our patience is firmly rooted in the fact that in reality, we have no ability to change anything without His permission. Not from the biggest of things, whether it's belief of us or other people, or worldly, insignificant things, our job situation, our relationships with others, or the fact that it's hot or cold outside. This is how we're supposed to believe. And this is the belief that we know and recite on a daily basis. But how many of us actually reflect on that? How many of us use this in our day-to-day lives, or is something that we run by? Again, brothers and sisters, time is a very valuable thing. And it's going to keep on ticking and keep on going by. Are we going to just sit and watch it as it goes by, or are we going to take it by the reins and benefit from every second that we have? I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us a people that always benefit from their time. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us a people who not only benefit from their time, but see the importance of our time. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make our time filled with belief in Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya Allah, give us a firm and concrete belief in You. A belief in You that fuels us to do good, to be from the people that do good. Ya Allah, make us have a firm and concrete belief that gives us peace in our lives, peace in our minds, and peace in our hearts. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us a people that are on the forefront of doing good, and no matter what it happens. Ya Allah, make us not a people who sit back and watch things happen when we could be a people who are doing good, people who are trying to bring change in our lives. Ya Allah, change our conditions to only focus on You and You alone. Change our conditions of our hearts, change our conditions of our minds, change the conditions of our families, so that we are always striving to be a people that do good, people that try to bring change first in our belief, so that we can become better people, Ya Allah, and then in our actions, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, make us a people that are bringing change not only in our personal lives, but in our communities. People that when others see us, they know that we are people that stand upon goodness. They know that they can rely on us in our communities, Ya Allah. Make us a people, Ya Allah, that have patience in every aspect of our lives. Patience in our belief, a patience that fuels doing good. Patience in our actions, and patience when dealing with other people. وَأَقُولُ قَوْلِي هَذَا وَاسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ لِي وَلَكُمْ وَلِسَائِرِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَاسْتَغْفِرُوا وَأَتُوبُ إِلَيْهِ. Please remember Sheikh Yasser, who's not feeling too well, but inshallah he'll be back soon, and our brothers and sisters who are coming back from Umrah.